Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Learning Sound and Synthesis Spotlight Series interview. I am here with my wonderful student, alumni of Learning Sound and Synthesis, Duncan Hendy. And today we're going to be talking about how Duncan uses or incorporates classical chamber music composition and performance into his work with modular synthesizers to create a really interesting collection of audiovisual work and electronic music and electroacoustic music, and probably a bunch of stuff I don't even know about, I'm assuming, that we're going to learn about from you. So, welcome, first and foremost. I'm so happy to have you
Thank you.
here.
Glad
And
to be here.
welcome to everyone who's watching live. Let me just make sure that I've pushed go live everywhere. Yes, okay, we have done that. If you're tuning in live, go ahead and drop a comment and say hello, because it's so nice to see you here and it's nice to know who's watching. And if you're tuning in after the fact, welcome to you as well. You can comment replay, you can still ask questions, and we'll get back to you in the future. So that's awesome. Okay, let's start off with a little intro, if you don't mind. Duncan, can you tell us a bit about who you are and what kind of music you currently love to make?
Okay, yeah, my name is Duncan Hendy, as you can see from the name at the bottom. I'm based in the Czech Republic, originally from England, and I moved to Czech Republic mostly because it's a massive home of great classical composers and very experimental musicians. And so this is what attracted me. And what I do in the Czech Republic is I do various compositional projects, but my real love is audiovisual installation. And this is what attracted me to the course because I am a cellist by nature and always been fascinated with the extended techniques of cello. You know, what noises can you make? And by different bowing techniques, pressure, you can achieve all kinds of harmonic overtones, like filtering, like oscillation. And I always was very interested in how can I kind of have this as a layer and then build it up as a kind of the texture and take it further and challenge myself to try and perform it live.
Okay, so I have two questions just to clarify for folks who are watching. One is, you're a cellist, right? You're a classically trained cellist?
I am, yes.
Yeah. And the second thing is, can you define for us, just, this might be difficult, but a quick definition of what an audiovisual installation is, just in case people aren't familiar with those words?
Okay, so it's taking the space that you're going to perform in, be it like a gallery or something, and making that a performance space. So it features within what you're doing. So it's contextual. So you're thinking about visuals, you're thinking about telling a story, you're thinking about sonic deception many times, but it's about the sonic and audio manipulation that makes that particular space that you're performing in as vital as the performance you're giving.
Right. So you're turning your performance environment into not just the place that you happen to be performing in, but part of the experience itself, right? That's what I'm understanding from you.
Precisely, precisely.
Very, very cool. And so different ways that you might do this would be by using maybe visual projections, or by doing maybe surround spatial audio, different things like that. Is that correct?
That's correct. And also, one of the things I do when I'm not being a musician, or not that you can ever switch it off, is I work in structural engineering software. And one of the insights this has given me, and the tools it's given me, is I can work with resonant frequencies. I love this. It means you can actually map what frequencies you can produce that will make the building and the space you're in resonate as well. So it becomes a performance in itself. And this
Oh,
is
beautiful.
fascinating. I'm playing off this.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I really love, one of the aspects of electronic music and working with electronic instruments that I love so much is the speaker. You know, we always think about the instrument as being the thing that generates sound, but it's so exciting to think about the loudspeakers and the room. And is it really reverberant? Is there like a 10-second echo? Like, that's all becomes, or it can become, part of your instrument. It sounds like you're really tapping into all of that in your work, which is very cool.
Definitely. And when I discovered that if you create a flyover from concrete, if you create the correct resonant frequency, you can make it fall down. So what better?
Oh, that's scary. Okay.
Or you can avoid it. That's even
Or
better.
you can avoid it. That is better. Okay, so you mentioned, thanks for the introduction. It's already so fascinating. You mentioned, as you were talking about the fact that you're an audiovisual installation artist, that's what drew you to learning sound and synthesis, my class. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because I think that might not be a link that is very obvious for some people. You know, most people think, oh, I'll take Sarah's class because I want to learn how to make music with modular synthesizers. But you are coming at it as a classical cellist, wanting to use the material from the class to create what and why. I'm volleying back over to you. These
Okay.
experiences that you're creating.
Yeah, sure. So when I first started with audiovisual, I was the composer. So I
Okay.
would compose. I would probably do also maybe a tape piece as well. So in the kind of Xenakis approach. But I was very much a composer working with classical musicians who were very capable and could anything I threw at them, they were able to play. But I realized that was a limitation because I wanted something more spontaneous. So it would be, could I perform? Could I do something more with what I know, these techniques I know? Can I manipulate that sound even further? And what attracted me to the course is the fact that you're constantly thinking about, okay, we can generate sound. That's a basic thing we do. But what we do with it is where the real music and the real creation happens. And that's what excited me. And that's why I wanted to learn, okay, how can I do this? So in my studio, I have three particular areas. One area is experimentation and strangeness. So I know I can always go there, record everything I'm doing. I can manipulate it live. The next one is a kind of like producing it into something that's presentable. And then the third one is the most interesting thing, which is how can I do this live? So I like the kind of working triangle. The third one's a
Oh,
bit
cool.
scary.
I
Yeah.
love that though. Okay, so experimentation and strangeness, is that what you said?
Oh yes, yes,
I
yeah. I
love
love.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Experimentation and strangeness. And then so the first kind of category is just experimenting. It can be weird, it can be unfamiliar. You're just sort of generating ideas, seeing what you can come up with. I love that.
Exactly.
I talk about that as my like throwing spaghetti on the wall stage where I'm just like throwing
Yeah.
paint, throwing spaghetti, like what sticks, what do I see? Like, woo, that's weird. And I just have fun with that process. I think it's such an important part of the music making process. And then you
It is.
do your, oh, sorry, you go ahead. I keep cutting you
No,
off.
no, no, no. It's exactly what you said. It enables spontaneity.
Yeah.
It enables you to be free, but at the same time to be aware because you know this is the space for this. And so you really just let yourself go. You record, you record, you record. Something magnificent will come out of it. You discover later when you listen to it. But it's just like, okay, this is my palette. This is the palette I'm creating. And from this, I take it to the next stage and I start to organize it.
Great. Okay, so that also must be really liberating because you're not worried so much at that first stage with how it's going to turn out. Is this a 5-minute piece, a 10-minute piece? Like, what's the structure? You're not even really concerned with that. You're just exploring and recording.
This is true. And the thing is, these also what you create acts as a trigger and you can respond to it. So you would take it in completely a different direction. It would be like you go on a speed date with your own equipment and you never know what questions or which way the music or the sound will actually go.
Yeah, I love that. I always think about that every time I sit down with my instruments. I'm always the question in my mind is like, what might I discover today, or what might I hear today with these instruments for the very first time? You know, and that kind of curiosity about where I might go that I've never been before really drives so much of my personal work. So, can you talk about how you go from that first stage of exploration and just free play to the second stage of maybe, okay, I like these ideas, like let's turn this into something?
Definitely. I record everything. That's very important. No, there's no such thing as practice. Everything is performance. You have to record absolutely everything. So I make sure that everything is recorded. I have all the outputs on separate tracks. I import it into Logic. Logic is my kind of place where I start to paint a little bit here, paint a little bit there, and I layer things that didn't occur necessarily in that order, because you discover it's like a puzzle
Right.
where every place you put it, it creates a different picture. It's like these kind of Asian pictures where you can put them in any order, and it creates a pictogram. And that's the way of looking at it. You can just put it in any order. You can perhaps even get one thing to cancel the other thing, and then you
Mhm.
have different effects. The effects can also influence the sound that's coming from a different instrument. So it's really thinking about how does the relationship between these sounds, this palette that I've created, create the final picture.
Do you often have an idea for a piece or a concept? Like, I'm going to tell a story, or it's about this particular theme, or do you just hear a sound and respond to it purely musically?
It depends. I do sometimes, like for example, my wife's grandmother's cottage was abandoned for like 20 years. So I went in there with a field recorder and I recorded absolutely every sound. I hit things randomly and created a nice kind of tapestry of sounds that I could use later. And I worked with those. And when I heard it, I thought of one particular actor, John Barrymore, who's the grandfather of Drew Barrymore, famous Hollywood drunk, but who still, his focus on his love of Shakespeare was everything that drove him. So he had this kind of alcoholic persona struggling with this frustrated thespian. And I thought, my this kind of home space that was where my mother-in-law was born and raised, and this abandoned. It's like the two are fighting against each other. They're almost trying to exist simultaneously because the memories are there, the space is there. And I thought, this is great because I love John Barrymore and I love this kind of dichotomy he creates. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to combine the two? And so I did. And it created something that I never initially had, but it was because I went to a specific space, captured those sounds, and it created this kind of slushy Shakespeare, but with a true kind of sentiment.
Is that that music or those concepts part of what you sent over to me on your
It's
Bandcamp?
not, but it's
Okay.
on Bandcamp, but it's not. It's not one of those tracks. Actually, I did it with a couple of pieces. I also did one with Laurence Olivier, who's the more kind of, say, the successful Shakespeare actor, whereas a John Barrymore, who was successful on the stage but failed later in life, but he never lost his passion. So I did
Got
two
it.
pieces, one based on Laurence Olivier and one based on John Barrymore.
Okay, I'm going to float your Bandcamp link up on the screen here so if people can go check it out if they're curious to hear this, the result of what sounds like a really incredible process. You can go duncanhendy.bandcamp.com and listen to that. Um, we have a little comment from someone named Jim in the chat, which I'm going to pull up on the screen. You have to record everything. Absolutely. I'm all about it. Even if something doesn't stand as a finished piece, it can be raw material for something else. Even as I've occasionally found, you don't return to it for decades. It's so true. I can't tell you how many times I've come across something that I recorded years later and I'm like, oh, this, it was like a scrap that I was going to throw away, but it's the perfect little layer or element for this thing that I'm working on now. I just wasn't ready for it yet or something when I first made it. I didn't see the potential in it.
Absolutely, it's like books. If you go to a bookshop, secondhand bookshop, you'll something will attract you to a book, and you'll buy it, and it'll sit on the shelf for years because it's not the right time to read it. And then suddenly you go, "Oh, that must read it," and it totally connects with you because it's the right context and the right time.
Right. Totally. I love that. Okay, so wow, this conversation has already gone in so many directions I wasn't expecting, which is wonderful. It's why I love doing these interviews. I'm curious. I know that there are a lot of people in this community who are in a similar situation that you were, I guess, before you joined Learning Sound and Synthesis. They're either musicians who play something other than synthesizers, not necessarily a classical musician, but maybe just someone who plays an acoustic instrument or something like that. And they're kind of curious about, how can I expand what I'm doing to maybe have a little more agency over my full music production process, right? I also know that there are a lot of people who are curious about installation work and scoring and doing more immersive experiences. So this was a very long preamble to my question, but my question is just, um, is there anything in particular that you found most helpful, or any insights that perhaps you could offer those people who are back where you were, 6, 12 months ago, kind of like, I want to do this. How do I do this? Where do I begin? What do I do? Anything you can offer to like build that bridge for those people?
Definitely, the classical world is very disciplined. This is true, and you're taught what makes a good performer, what makes a bad performer. I mean, the most important thing you'll ever learn is the breathing and allowing yourself to channel yourself through the music is the most perfect way to get a real performance. Now, what you have to do is give yourself the freedom to fail, because
Mm,
that's the great thing about electronic music. If you fail, you actually will produce probably the best thing you've ever done, because it's not failure. In a classical sense, it might be because you would say, okay, I'm not keeping those performance controls I've been grilled to keep. But the thing is that the spontaneity of electronic music, the fact that you know what it does, but if you move something, you plug something in a way that you're not familiar with, it actually channels some form of creativity that you wouldn't get unless you were confident enough to allow yourself to do that. And this is very, very important. And one of the best things that I learned from you, Sarah, is that you can do more with less. Coming from a classical composer background, working with symphony orchestras and choirs, it's a huge, huge palette. You got this to coordinate, and you have to. But actually, if you try and apply that to the world of synthesis, you're going to find it's not very liberating. If you can be familiar with the tools you have, you can know, if I do this, it will create something like that. Or if I plug this in, it's going to go wrong. It's good, because all of that means that you are not constantly reaching, constantly frustrating, constantly limiting your creativity by having a huge Emerson, Lake and Palmer rack of synthesizers behind you, because it just doesn't allow the spontaneity. If you want to go that way, that's good, but you have to be really clear why you're going that way.
yeah, of course, a big rack full of modules is a lot of fun, but I
Yes.
do no one's denying that. But I do
Oh, I love
love
it.
what you're saying of you can get so much more from less. I think it's definitely a big thing that I emphasize inside of the learning sound and synthesis class and just in general, right? I mean, the number one thing I hear my students say is, I had no idea how much you could do with a simple fill in the blank, a simple basic oscillator, a simple basic envelope, a simple basic LFO. These tools, if you look at them from one angle, are simple and basic and one dimensional. But if you're clever and thoughtful about how you use them, and that's why we put such a big emphasis in the class on the fundamentals. It's not to be, it's so that we can get depth with the tools, right? And if you can use them in a creative way and you combine them in a creative way and you listen deeply to what you're doing, you'll realize that a simple, basic fill in the blank is a playground that can lead you to basically an endless supply of amazing music. I'm still discovering what a, sine wave oscillator can do.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I liked the fact that you communicated that, and I think it meant people that became more aware of what that one thing did.
Right.
And what if I combine it with something else? And you can have a massive collection of synthesizers, and who doesn't? But it's like, okay, I'm going to limit myself to three things. I'm going to take that one and that one because I know they kind of work together. But I have no idea what that one's going to do. So I'm going to
Hmm.
bring it in, and then you discover a completely different area and a different playground than anything you've ever done before.
It's so fun. I also really want to just re-echo what you said about permission to fail. I think that is so powerful. Um, I, you know, I also have a background in classical music, and I'm a orchestrally classically trained trumpet player. And I'm not going to tell you my life story right now, but I will say that failure was this thing I avoided at all costs. Like the wrong note, the wrong time, the wrong tone. Oh my God. Like it was the biggest, worst thing you could do. But since learning and getting into electronic music and working with modular synthesizers, my whole definition of failure has changed. And I think of them now as opportunities, right? They're like points of discovery. Oops, I didn't expect that. How fascinating. What's going on there? Can I do it again on purpose? Can I leverage that? Right? It's like, an exciting opportunity to learn when something doesn't happen the way you're thinking it's supposed to happen.
Exactly. It's like going for a walk along a cliff top and going off the beaten track and discovering the most unusual village you've ever seen, where the people have a very different culture to your own, or a different approach, or a different way of thinking. And you go in there and suddenly you're transformed because it's a completely different atmosphere.
Right.
As I said, it takes it out of your comfort zone. But aren't you so glad that you weren't there?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I have a question from someone in the audience. Carlos P is asking you, this is a question for you, Duncan. Do you have a favorite module or synth in your palette right now?
Well, yeah, definitely the one that I'm using a lot. Use it, and I know you're a big fan as well. Is the Strager. I love the Strager.
Yeah.
I really do. I find that anything you put into it, it creates something interesting, and it's very versatile for something so small.
Right.
And I know you can get all the rest of the make noise stuff, but I thought I'd only get Strager because I want to see what it does in isolation, and it does a lot.
Yep, it's a beautiful instrument. Yeah, very cool. Thanks for that's such a hard question for me to answer, so I'm glad they asked you and not me.
Yeah,
Because I'm always
I
like,
actually prepared. I made a list of the ones I'm using currently that I really like, and I quickly glanced down, and Straker's at the top of the list.
Oh, good.
So,
Okay. Yeah, it's such a hard question. Chris
yeah.
Leventis. Oh, it's good to see you, Chris. I'm happy you're here. It says permission to fail. Yes, failure is mandatory. Great conversation. Yes, I love that. Sometimes failing can help us unlearn things. That's a great perspective as well. I love that.
Yeah, that's very true. If you come from a different background, you can feel quite restricted by it. But when you fail and you realize, wow, is that the consequence of failure? I created this, then it's completely makes it okay.
Right. That's so good. It's so good. Okay. Thank you so much for answering those questions. Thanks for everyone in the chat who's chiming in. It's so much more fun to have this be like a, conversation among all of us. Once again, I'm going to put your link up here, Duncan's Bandcamp link on the screen. If anyone wants to go and check out his music, which I highly recommend you do. It combines cello and electronics and all kinds of other beautiful things. It's definitely worth exploring. Duncan, is there anything else that you have on your mind that you want to share with people as we're talking?
I would only say to re-echo is to sometimes it's good to buy something unusual that you really don't know what it does and put it into your setup. This can be very interesting. One of the things I bought purely because I love Doctor Who. I'm an absolute fanatic on Doctor Who and early 1960s synthesizer music is that Error Instruments does this thing called Radiophonic Workshop, and no idea what it did. Didn't even listen to any of the previews. So I thought, I love the title. I'll just buy it. And I plugged it in, and I thought, what on earth is this? But it's an enormously creative instrument that I don't have anything that does something similar. So I like this. This could be fun. Just if you're randomly going past something and you see something, oh, that could be interesting. Bring it in and try it out. You never know.
Interesting. And another way people could explore this that wouldn't actually require buying anything, which I also just always like to share, would be in VCV Rack. You could browse. Okay, if I'm going to put the link to VCV Rack here, I think I've got it. let's see, pull this up on the screen, vcvrack.com. You all hear me talking about this all the time because I'm such a big fan. And no, this is not an official endorsement or sponsorship. I just think they're great. It's a free modular synth software that you can use that emulates the workflow of hardware synths. It sounds amazing. It's free. And there are thousands and thousands of modules. So you could do what Duncan was just saying and go like window shopping in the library and be like, oh, I like the name of that one. No idea what it does, but let's bring it in and kind of see where it leads us. I think that would be really, really fun.
I love VCV Rack. I belong to one forum, and they constantly are sending people's kind of palettes of VCV modules, and I'm always downloading them and listening to them because you can learn from what other people are doing.
Oh, for
How did they
sure.
do that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, people are saying Michael, there are so many free modules in VCV, you could probably explore all the combinations for a lifetime. I completely
Oh
agree.
yeah, absolutely.
Agree. And that's also why I use it to teach in all of my classes, because it's just so deep and it's amazing. It's really accessible. That's a good segue. Speaking of my classes, really briefly, I just want to put this link up on the screen here, soundandsynthesis.com. Duncan is an alumni of the Learning Sound and Synthesis program that I run twice a year. It is my sound design and electronic music course that teaches you how to make music and design your own sounds from scratch using synthesizers. And as you've probably guessed, I teach using VCV Rack because it's free. So you don't actually need any gear to take the class. But if you have a Eurorack system or some semi-modular synths or something that even a keyboard synthesizer, you can still use that instrument in this class because you're going to be learning how everything under the hood, so to speak, works, how all the individual components of your instruments work, and how you can combine them together to make more music and have more fluency and expression in your patches. So if you go to that link, what you'll see right now is the wait list. And if you're curious to hear more about the class when it opens, you can go ahead and just sign up and drop your email in there. The next round will open in mid-August. So not that far from now, actually. And that will be the fall 2024 cohort. And that will be the last time it runs this year. So in the meantime, if you have questions about whether it's the right fit for you or any of those things, just send me a message or leave a comment, and I'm always happy to answer your questions. Anything else? What else should we say? Any parting words as we're wrapping up here, Duncan?
Well, I can say that your course is definitely worth it. So I went through it and I found it very beneficial. And the thing is that it's great to learn different approaches when it's really stripped down to the elements, because often people buy synthesizers because they think with this I'm going to be the next Hans Zimmer, and the reality is, yeah, maybe you will be, but you have to learn the basics of why things must go in a certain order. And even more exciting, what happens if you don't put them in the right order?
Right.
So yeah, so it's really a great course for emulating everything Sarah's doing, and you'll quite often find frustration. I'm doing exactly the same thing, but it's not doing that, and you go, oh yeah, it's not doing that. So you adjust something to actually to have the same settings that Sarah has, and you hear what the difference you're making by actually adjusting it. So you're learning by failing, which
Hey,
is the
once
motto for
again.
life.
Once again. Yeah, one of my secrets, which is not so secret, but we learn these fundamentals and these boring basics so that we can kind of break all the rules, right? You learn all the rules, you learn the fundamental building blocks, and then you can put them in any order you want, right? You can screw things up, you can break things on purpose. Like one of my favorite things to do is patch backwards, patch modules back into themselves and create feedback and create chaos. It's so fun to do. And the kind of confidence to do things backwards like that can come from getting really fluent in those fundamentals, if that makes sense. Amazing. Okay, let me just look at the comments here and see if there's anything else that would be fun to pull up. Graham Boyle says, thanks for the live stream. As people have said above, this is so completely inspiring.
That's
Thank you
great.
for
Good.
joining.
Thanks.
Great. Is there one piece of electronic gear that has an impact on how you approach the cello? Oh, that's an interesting question. Let's do that one, and then we'll maybe wrap up from there. Is there a piece of electronic equipment that you've encountered that has impacted the way you approach the cello?
Yes. But I won't just leave it like that because I know it's a yes no question. I won't
Yes.
be so cruel. One of the things I do love is granular synthesis.
Yeah.
And I have a very nice granular synthesizer that allows me to react to the sounds I'm producing. This is good because the problem with the cello is it's very hands-on. It really is. And you need to have that freedom to do something with your spare limbs.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not going to get
You
much
need to
done.
grow an extra
Well,
arm.
precisely. So the kind of the live sampling and granular synthesis and playing the granular synthesizer with a baseboard with your feet is great.
Okay, granular synthesis. You guys all can check that out. I know there are some great options in VCV Rack. Speaking of VCV Rack, so if you just go to the VCV Rack library and do a keyword search for maybe granular or something like that, I'm sure some cool options will come up.
And you can route all your hardware controllers through it as well. It's amazing. It's amazing for free. If you pay for it, you'll love it even more. But the free version is the best way to discover what can I do with this and how can I be me. And who
Yeah.
am I? That's another thing. Who am I? That's
Who
something
am
you
I?
might think you know who you are musically, but once you actually plug it in and start it, you go, oh, actually, I'm a complete stranger to myself. Oh,
Yeah.
hello.
I love that so much. That's so great. Just speaking of VC Feedback, in case anyone who's watching either live or the replay is brand new to this whole topic and is like, okay, I'm going to go download VC Rack. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even really know if I know what modular synthesis is. First of all, welcome, and I'm so happy you're here. That's awesome. Second of all, send me a DM or leave a comment on this live stream that says mini course, because I have a free mini course that I can give you that will walk you through how to download and get set up in VCV Rack, how the basic signal flow works, how to make your first few sounds from scratch. And it'll take you just about an hour or two to go through, and you will have a really solid foundation, and it's completely free. So if you want that, comment mini course on the comments or send me a DM and say, hey, can I have that mini course? And I will send it to you. Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you so much, Duncan, for joining. It's
Thank you for having me.
really inspiring. Permission to fail. That is the thing that I'm taking away the most from this. Just remember that our failures can be starting points, and they so often are, right? It's beautiful.
They are. They are.
Okay. All right. Thanks, folks, for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next Spotlight Series live stream. Bye for now, everyone.